signs and wonders and mighty healings by the power of God are still the way that the gospel is demonstrated to be true and powerful and relevant to the world that the people live in that are hearing the message. Hey, good day to all of you. We are so glad you're with us for the book of Acts again. And we're just really moving forward through the book. We're going to start in chapter 14 today. Let's just quickly recap what we saw last time in chapter 13. That in the synagogues that Paul and Barnabas go to on this missionary trip, that there are really two groups of people. The physical descendants of Abraham, the Jews, and then the Gentiles who have been won over as proselytes to the Jewish faith, and they're there as well. And we're expecting, and Luke takes pains in chapter 13 to establish the difference between those two groups. And through the rest of the book, we're going to see how important that difference is in so many places where Paul goes to minister the gospel. So now we're at chapter 14 in verse 1, which says, "Now it happened in Iconium that they went together to the synagogue of the Jews, and so spoke that a great multitude both of the Jews and the Greeks believed." Now here's another way of referring to that second group of people. Here in this verse, Luke refers to them as the Greeks. And remember in chapter 13, they were called the God-fearers, they were called the Gentiles, a number of different things. Here they're called Greeks. And in verse 2, it says, after this wonderful thing, all these people believing, that the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brethren. Therefore they stayed there a long time, speaking boldly in the Lord, who was bearing witness to the word of his grace, granting signs and wonders to be done by their hands. And I just want to tell you, folks, that signs and wonders and mighty healings by the power of God are still the way that the gospel is demonstrated to be true and powerful and relevant to the world that the people live in that are hearing the message. But verse 4 we read, "The multitude of the city was divided, part sided with the Jews and part with the apostles. And when a violent attempt was made by both the Gentiles and Jews with their rulers to abuse and stone them, they became aware of it and fled to Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and to the surrounding region. And they were preaching the gospel there." So let's take a look at this on the map and kind of show you where this all is so you understand this. Now bear in mind this is not an ancient place map, this is a modern map, but they start out from Antioch, the church sends them out, they're there, they go to Cyprus, they come around like this. We've read all that now in the preceding chapters, and then they shoot up here and enter what is now southern Turkey. They go up like this, they go to these cities we just mentioned, they kind of circle around over here, and they actually come back, backtrack when they come back, all according to that same track, and return to Antioch. That's Paul's first missionary journey. So, in Lystra then, let's go to verse 8. In Lystra, a certain man without strength in his feet was sitting. He was handicapped from his mother's womb. He had never walked. This man heard Paul speaking. Paul, observing him intently and seeing that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, "Stand up straight on your feet." And he leaped and walked. Now when the people saw what Paul had done, they raised their voices, saying in the Lycaonian language, "The gods have come down to us in the likeness of men." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes because he was the chief speaker. Now let's just stop for a moment here on these two very important gods in the Greek pantheon. Zeus, of course, was the chief of the gods, in charge of everybody. And Hermes, as Luke mentions here, is all about communication, speaking, and making the will of the gods known to human beings. So much so that the name Hermes, you take that Greek god's name Hermes and add to it the Greek word pneuma, spirit or attitude, you get the English word hermeneutics from that combination of words. So in a sense, Hermes in the Greek mythology is the interpreter of the God's will to human beings. Now, we may look at this now from our modern standpoint and say, boy, what a crazy thing to say about Paul and Barnabas. But hey, listen, at least they found some hooks on the wall in their worldview to hang what Paul and Barnabas were saying. And it was a start, okay? Maybe, certainly they weren't Zeus and Hermes, but the fact of this miracle gets them into the supernatural realm, into the realm of the Spirit, where the Spirit of God can begin to work on them, and they can be claimed for the gospel. So, verse 13, then the priest of Zeus, whose temple was in front of their city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates, intending to sacrifice with the multitudes. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard this, they tore their clothes and ran in among the multitude, crying out, saying, Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men with the same nature as you, and preach to you that you should turn from these useless things to the living God, who made the heaven, the earth, the sea, and all things that are in them. A miracle of this caliber really arrests the attention of the whole city. And I want to tell you from personal experience that God is doing these same things today. I was in a city in India called Nandikotkur, and we were having a wonderful time. It was actually my second time to be there. And we had the vast majority of the village on the grounds. There were tens of thousands of people were there. And I'll never forget this night when this miracle happened. We were taking healing testimonies, and this woman came up in the line holding the hand of a young boy. And I thought, wow, wonderful, a nice-looking young boy. He's maybe got healed of headaches or, a toothache or something. And when she got up there, this is what she said. She said, this is my son. He's 5 years old. He was born without sinews or tendons in his legs. He could not walk. She said, I never had a problem knowing where he was, because wherever I set him down, that's where he'd be when I came back to find him, because he couldn't move. And she said, here's what happened tonight. We were entering into the presence of the glory of the Lord in praise and worship. She said, I stood up on my feet, I raised my hands, and I began praising Jesus. And she said, the glory of God came so strong. The next thing that happened, I felt something against my leg. It was my boy standing up for the first time in his life at the age of 5. He had supernaturally the Spirit of God had put into his legs sinews and tendons. Friend, that's a creative miracle. And it electrified that crowd that night. Now, thank the Lord they didn't call us Zeus and Hermes, okay? But they greatly glorified God. And that's what you have to do in those situations. You have to keep the glory going to Jesus and to the Father and to the Holy Spirit, who does these things on the earth. And I'll never forget her taking the boy by the hand and walking him around till he began to run, while she kind of trotted next to him on the platform with those newly found legs that were working in just perfect order. We had thousands of people come to Jesus that night after seeing that miracle and attributing it to Jesus, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But Jesus, lover of little children, and one who loves to do the things like this man who never walked from his mother's womb, and same thing with this boy that we saw there in Nandikotkur. So I'm telling you today that this supernatural power of God is available. What we have got to do is trust him, believe him. Sometimes we've got to just step out there into an area of risk, and we call it risk, and trust God, who is completely trustworthy. He will confirm his words with signs, wonders, and miracles of the gospel. So be encouraged by that today. God bless you. It's been wonderful being with you, and we'll see you next time.